All right. It's all on you.
Good evening, everyone. This is Eshan Hines from My Brother's Keepers Cares, also known as MBKCares. Welcome to episode 3 of season number 2 of the Wellness Wednesday discussions. Tonight's discussion is going to be called It Takes a Village. And the theme for this conversation was birthed out of the idea that not only does it take a village in order to raise children, a lot of us being parents understands that that's a biblical principle. I guess just a principle of community, period. But we also realize that it takes a village in order to heal people, from mental health components to just being there for people for grief support, economic support, just all types of ways that communities work in harmony and in concert with one another. So tonight we have an incredible panel. I'll be moderating the discussion alongside MBKCares executive member Eric Marsh. He's also a co-founder of the Fathering Circle. Our guests tonight include George Cephas from Survival to Success, Kirsten Britt from I Am a Girl Genius. She's also part of MBKCares. We have Doug Reed from Black Men Heal, and we have Oba Sankofa from the Eco Foundation. So welcome to our guests. Welcome to you, the Facebook community, YouTube community, however you're consuming this content tonight. We welcome you. We appreciate you. We hope that you hear something tonight that is encouraging to you. We hope that you would engage with us with your questions and your feedback. We would love to share your questions with our panel as well as give feedback to one another. This is an open discussion and it includes you as well. I'm going to pass the opportunity to speak on to my brother, Eric.
Brother Eshan, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that's tuning in and watching. I just want to be real brief. I'm actually looking forward to this conversation and connecting with the folks here on this panel tonight. A lot of you, we have crossed paths or have heard your names over the years, but haven't really had a chance to collaborate. And so one of the things I'm hoping that we can get out of this conversation is an opportunity to build together because of all the great work that each of you and your organizations are doing across the city. So I'm gonna just go around and choose individuals. And if you could share your name, your organization, and your role with that organization, and something brief regarding, what you hope to get out of this conversation tonight or what you hope to share, please feel free to do that. So I'm going to start with Brother Doug Reed from Black Men Heal. Doug, how you doing tonight?
Hey, what's up, family? I'm Doug Reed out of Black Men Heal. I am one of the program coordinators for Black Men Heal. Black Men Heal is a nonprofit organization that concentrates on the well-being of Black men concerning mental health. There are 3 things that make a difference in Black Men Heal as far as what the mission is. One is to remove the stigma of therapy for Black men. The other thing is to pair men up with a clinician or a therapist of color, and to actually alleviate costs. We actually offer free therapy sessions to men. One of my things that I do in regards to program coordinator, I'm the program coordinator of King's Corner, and we'll talk about that further down the line. But thank you guys for actually inviting me, and I look forward to the conversation.
Excellent, thank you. All right, our next panelist is George Cephas of Survival to Success. George, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Eric? Pleasure to be here with everybody today. My name is George Cephas. I am the founder of Survival to Success, which is a nonprofit that provides underserved communities with opportunities to heal mentally, spiritually, and financially. One of the components of my nonprofit is a group for fathers called the Fellow Father Circle, which is just a space for fathers to connect with one another, exchange resources, and have real conversations in order for us to, grow together as men for our families and for our communities. And I also do a youth program as well to kind of help youth to identify their own trauma, the effects that it's had on them, and how to heal and grow from it, and then using that to feel their passion and their purpose. And in regards to what I'm looking to get from out of the conversation today, I actually had a dream recently of, collaborating with a bunch of different initiatives in Philadelphia, because, there's a lot of us who have so many different initiatives going on, but we're so much better as a collective. And so I'm glad that we're having this conversation today.
Excellent, I appreciate that. All right, our next guest is Oba Sankofa of the Eco Foundation.
Peace and love, everybody. First and foremost, whenever I step onto a platform, I always want to give a shout out to my direct ancestors, which were LGD Bird and Ruth Bird, and then Charles and Irene Lloyd. I always want to make sure that they are with me in space and platform whenever I speak out to the masses. So shout out to them, libations. But I am the president of the ECO Foundation, and the ECO stands for Education, Culture, and Opportunities, and that's all we provide and strive for throughout our communities that we serve. We serve as far as northeast as Frankfurt and as far southwest as Richard Allen. So all we want to do is make sure that each child and each person that we come in contact with join up with us in our mission to serve and provide education, culture, and opportunities for everybody, whether it's paid or unpaid, or whether it's teaching them about their culture or immersing them in their culture by doing food drives and delivering free food to people, and having young men and women join in with us during that cause, whether it's just educating them, whether it's educating them in the streets, whether it's educating in the schools, or whether it's educating them virtually. However we have to get the job done, that's what we do. And I'm grateful and humbled to be here and learn from everybody in the circle.
Excellent. That's beautiful. Thank you for that. And last but not least is the awesome and amazing Kirsten Britt, a returning guest, a panelist, and a board member of MBKCares. She's also the founder of I Am a Girl Genius. Kirsten, please welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Eric, for that introduction. Yes, so I'm founder of Inspire Me to Change, and our new brand is Girl Genius. And this is an opportunity to help equip women of color in the ways of empowerment through business, really helping women to next level their entrepreneurship journeys and to seek out ways of collaboration just as women. So that's usually identified as a struggle for women of color to collaborate on those kind of levels. But this is a platform where we are able to pull in entrepreneurship, faith, and healthy living, and pull them all together to next level our lives, our families, and our legacy.
Excellent. That's beautiful. So again, welcome y'all. Thank you all for being here. I want to jump into the first set of questions, just in keeping with the history and the legacy of MBKCares and how we started the Wellness Wednesday program, right? We started this at the beginning of COVID in early April, once the quarantine began. And the reason why we did this was because we, as an organization, had originally been meeting in the community and having public conversations around the issues of violence reduction, suicide, and bullying reduction, and general wellness, right? And so our original questions always started off with, how are you managing or how are you navigating COVID-19 and the quarantine? So I want to adapt that question a little bit because we have Doug here from Black Men Heal. I'd like to start off with, how are you seeing and managing, because of the type of work that you do and so many people responding, what have you seen as a result of the quarantine, and what kind of impact has it had on the work of Black Men Heal?
I think with COVID-19, one thing that's actually transpired is the fact that we've been able to actually come back, or I'm gonna say come back, but we're in our families now. Where we actually spending that quality time with family and realizing, men and women, that the kings and queens that we are. And you talked about the village. So I think in that respect, it's a great opportunity just to be Black. This is prime time now because we're actually back in our homes. And what has happened is we're learning how to spend that quality time and understanding each other, the communication within the family. We're understanding each other's real boundaries and what it means, and giving them the proper space. So that's actually, one of the things that's happened within the family. But then there's that time, now the fact that we're quarantined, we have to have that time away where, whatever you do, to whether you read, whether you exercise, whether those other things outside of taking that time to spend, and I know Kristen talked about self-care, taking that opportunity to really focus on you. One of the things is even with that, sometimes you have to say no to certain things. One thing as far as what we do, and I can probably speak for the whole panel, is we're all givers, and with givers you constantly give. So I think just being in this quarantine is a great opportunity for us to really understand our families, really understand who we are, and then actually to make a difference. One thing about Black Men Heal is it's about men. It's heal men, heal men. The fact that if men to become healed for whatever situation they deal with, then we can impact our families, we can impact our communities, we can impact our states, our nation, globally. So I think that's the most important thing, is the fact we are able to identify who we are, and we actually set a foundation to continue on and have that love and that setting the example in our families, and it continuing throughout our families.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's dope. I appreciate that.
Eric,
Say it again, Kirsten.
can I say something, please?
Sure.
Well, one of the things I think for me that I've seen that this whole COVID quarantine has allowed is for the work that we all do. So outside of Girl Genius, I'm also the vice president of Life Outside the Streets, and our focus is to treat trauma through arts, education, and entertainment. And then I'm also the director of outreach at Sarah Health Center. So the mental health thing is all across what I do. But one of the things I think this quarantine has offered, I'll say, is an opportunity to expose the need to care for yourself, right? And to expose the need to care for your mental health, and to acknowledge it and address it. And so I know people who have had whole entire mental breaks, right? That was forced as a result of the quarantine. Like when out of quarantine and out of shutdown and lockdown, you can do all of these different things to kind of avoid the inevitable, right? But then we get into this place where we're kind of boxed in, and all the things that we use to cope or escape, more so than cope, to escape, we can't do those things anymore. So now you're just faced with stuff. And so I think it's a prime and ripe opportunity for us to be able to do the work that we do, because now people are really faced with it. Like, you can't run from it. It's here. You get it, you see it, and you have to acknowledge it. And now we're able to provide the tools that we have in a way that I think the ground is more receptive to actually hear and use them, versus when I had those other things, when I could just run the streets when I wanted to run the streets, when I could work all these extra hours, when I could do all of these other things that kind of distracted me from what I really needed to be doing for self. So that's my take on that.
No, excellent. Yeah, I mean, that really does come into play. And what that brings to mind is I'm looking at OBA, right? And I'm looking at the work that you guys do at the Eco Foundation, right? And recognizing, I mean, you guys just had a huge grand opening with your location on Market Street. That I hope you can share a little bit about that. But talk about the work that you guys are doing, because it seems like that the work that you've already been doing to save the community, work in the community, to build up young people, to offer these resources and opportunities, just seem to be magnified and multiplied as a result of the quarantine and COVID. So can you talk a little bit about that and the work that you guys have done since quarantine? What's the contrast between before quarantine and after, and what have you been doing?
For sure. It's a humbling experience for sure. I would say that before the pandemic, it was a lot of noise, like Kirsten just said, there was a lot of different escapes. There was a lot of different ways that you could distract yourself, a lot of other distractions from people who are actually leading, the true leaders in our communities. You could see, I won't say frauds, but you could just see that there were different people who were vying for the community's attention who really weren't doing the real work. So once COVID happened, they were impacted as well. And so you got to see that, as she said as well, when you are still, the truth comes out, and truth can never be withheld, no matter how many people lie. And so with COVID happening, you can see now that the community could see that the work that we were already doing is now more in the light because we were already doing it. But now, since the ones that are not really doing the work have stopped, all you can see are the true leaders. And so what the pandemic has done is showing, it's illuminating, it's enlightening to the people who the true leaders in the streets really are. You know, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I'm just saying what has happened, and these are just the straight facts, is that the work that we were doing pre-COVID, we were already doing. It's just post-COVID, there are just leaders and people who are shining their light that this problem is really an opportunity for the community to see who they can really run to when this happens. And as a community of Black people, that's very powerful that they can really see that. And again, I'm just honored and grateful that the ECO Foundation can be that beacon, one of the many beacons that are in the community to shine light on the purpose of what we need to do to heal ourselves, to govern ourselves, and to live our lives for our children and the next generation.
Yeah. And so what I want to do later on is get an opportunity to hear a little bit more detail about each of your organizations, like actually the work, what you do, right? So being there, being a leader is important. Being president is important, but I think it's important. One of the purposes that we use this platform for is to promote the work that you do, so more people know to come to you as those leaders, right? Because oftentimes, just working with our network, our immediate network, will not allow us to get the level of like exposure, and not just exposure, but to reach the people that really could use us, right? And so I want to dig a little bit deeper into that. But George, kind of in line with the same question, how has your work been impacted or changed, or what have you seen since the beginning of the pandemic, beginning of quarantine for us in Philadelphia, particularly since March? And how has that impacted your work and the folks that you serve?
Yeah, just to go off of what Oba said, I had to do some self-reflection for myself. I was smiling when he was saying that because I had to think for myself back when it started, you know, what kind of person I was going to be throughout this time. You know, whether I was kind of going to sit in the shadows, you know, and not really, you know, do anything, or was I actually going to use this time to actually build up my nonprofit and actually do some work within the community. Because I feel as though before COVID happened, I really had the opportunity to kind of be on a community and talk about what I was doing, you know, like to go to different community events and talk about what I was doing, right? And then, you know, once COVID happened, I had to sit in the house, and it's like, I can't talk about what I'm doing anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I actually have to put in work. And I was in a process of doing my first youth program at School of the Future. And the first week of me doing a youth program was when COVID happened. And so I'm like, wow, like, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? Like, the COVID just happened. I only met these girls, you know, for 1 week. It's like, what am I going to do? And so about a couple weeks passed, and I'm like, I can't just leave them hanging like that. You know, like, I got to get virtual with it. I got to hop on a Zoom call with them. And so I had to, you know, get creative. I got on a Zoom call with them, and luckily I was able to have, you know, 3 or 5 girls who kind of stuck with the program, and I was able to stick with them throughout the rest of the school year. And then I was also able to kind of do more with my fellow father circle. You know, I was used to doing monthly meetings with them, and I had to continue that, you know what I mean? Because I was going through my own things personally and struggling with my own mental health while being stuck in a house, you know what I mean? And being a full-time father and stuff, you know, managing, like, you know, my time management skills was difficult, you know, but I couldn't let that be an excuse for me to not, you know, do the necessary work. And so I feel like the motto for me throughout, you know, COVID-19 was actually being the change that I want to see within my community, and not letting anything, you know, stop me from being that change, you know. And so, you know, I've been able to, you know, complete the youth program with the girls, which is really great, and continue with the fellow father circle in our monthly meetings. And then also I put on my first community event for my nonprofit on Saturday, which Isan and Kirsten was a part of. And so I'm in a process right now where I realize that in order for me to really start creating change, like, I have to be in the community. I have to, you know, be meeting people, the people who actually need the services, you know. and being able to provide those services to, you know, people within my community. In order for me to do that, I got to collaborate with people such as yourselves, so that way we can really start to make some change and really start getting. I feel like the major problem for a lot of us is funding. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people that I see within our initiative, we're doing things out of pocket. You know, I had to fully fund my event and stuff off of my own, you know, income that I had coming in, and so it's like we can only go so far using our own money and you know, trying to struggle to scrape things up to put things together. Like, I think it's so important for us to come together now and really start to build things up and start to get the money that we need for our different initiatives, so that we can really start to be the change that we want to be in our communities.
Brother George, to actually piggyback off the last thing you said, that is the reason why I wanted to have this discussion, is because of the wealth of resource that's available in community. From a standpoint of, even if it's just motivation, if you're around other people, I'm sure many of y'all have seen like the movie 300, or maybe you heard about Gideon from the Bible or whatever. When it's like a minor number of people, but they all standing in unity, it actually makes them feel like, yo, we can do this. And in a lot of cases they can, because they all have a collective mindset to overcome. And you realize in relationships are resources. Not to say that we drain from one another financially, but we can get community things done a lot easier if we're all coming together. If you have, somebody might have a speaker, somebody else might have a microphone, you can now come together, you have a sound system. You now just have resources just off of relationship. And I really realized that money was the thing that was holding me back for a while too, in my mind, right? And I didn't realize that if I put my actions out there, the resources would come of people. So a couple of years ago, well, MBKCares has been doing our work since 2012, but it initially just started off doing like concerts at Love Park and going around to do like motivational speeches and also opportunities to be a public speaker or advocate for suicide prevention. But it shifted into more community-based work over the last 2 years. And that opportunity brought me to resources of people. And I've told people this. I've met some people who are millionaires. I don't want any money from them. I want to learn from them, from the principle of, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but you teach him to fish, you feed him for life. The opportunities for us to come together, we can get so much done. I heard this amazing story, and I want to go into a question after this, but I got to share this testimony, something I thought was awesome, and encourage everybody on here. You're creating models that other people may actually walk in and try to create of just success. Just somebody seeing you do that event at Malcolm X Park this week, that's small to you, is huge to people. Like, to be able to say he laid out the whole park. And I'm gonna tell you why this is important. I saw this story from this guy named Cameron Witten, and he's from Portland. Cameron saw an opportunity to take advantage or to help his community after George Floyd's death. He realized he was having people reach out to him, his white colleagues or just coworkers, whoever was reaching out to him through social media, or were reaching out to him, and they were asking, how can I help? And he didn't see the same thing happening from all his other Black friends. He asked them, like, are people reaching out to you? Because people are reaching out to me. And he said, you know what? I'm going to try and raise money for other people who I know are struggling during this time of not only a pandemic, but now it's a racial uprising, just so much stuff just going wrong, right? And he posted something, and within a day, he gained $11,000 worth of support. And over the course of 28 days, they earned over $1 million of support. And that support was to go directly to the community to help people who had a need to pay a bill or to just have some type of deficit erased, right? And I was incredibly impressed by how they did that, because just the step of faith, it met with other people's opportunities to support. So I encourage you to not even allow yourself to think that you're limited by money, because you're not, because the relationships provide you resources that go beyond money. And that goes out to everyone. I just want to I want to start with you and then go into other people. How has your own personal experience fueled the work that you do now with the community? And I'll start with George, and I want to open it up to every single one of you. Can't hear you, George.
So the name of my nonprofit is Survival to Success, and the reason why I named it that was because when I was about 21, 22 years old, I was working about 80 hours a week. I was working overnight for 40 hours, and then I would go daytime and I would work from 3 to 11. And I was drained. trying to take care of my family. And I was just out of college, about a year or two out of college, and I kind of realized like I wasn't where I wanted to be. I had an apartment, I had a car, I had a nice little family, but I'm like, I this can't be life, just going to work all the time, coming home, playing video games, watching TV, finding different things to cope with how I was feeling, and then doing the same thing over and over again. Like they say, doing the same thing over and over again, that's called insanity. And so I realized that I was in survival mode in a sense. And, as I thought about it and I started to look around, I'm like, everybody is in survival mode. Like we're all so focused on the day to day that we can't even necessarily think about, a year or 3 years or 5 years from now. And so I feel as though for me, I wanted to break the cycle of survival within my community. I wanted to take the focus away from the day-to-day just surviving, and another thing, like when you ask somebody how they doing, a response that I get a lot of times is, I'm all right, I'm just surviving, day-to-day, like, but it's like, I want to shift that, like, I want to shift that from not just surviving to actually thriving, actually being successful in whatever capacity we believe that success is. So I really wanted to shift that within my community. And I feel like I thought originally that in order to do that, I had to teach people about financial literacy and about the importance of mindset. And I realized that it was a little bit deeper than that, and not a lot deeper than that. It's not like you can give people tools for financial literacy and you can teach them about, job readiness, but if they're not right mentally, if they're still dealing with a lot of trauma, they're still dealing with the hurt and pain from a past relationship or from abandonment, whatever the case may be, or low self-esteem, it doesn't mean anything. And so I realized that was what I needed to address first. And so I made the shift with my nonprofit and started focus on the trauma aspect and giving people those spaces to be vulnerable and share their stories. So that way we can, heal together as a community, and we can start giving everybody the permission to do that very same thing.
Mr. Kirsten, could you add to that? Because I know you're saying your same types of motivations. I'm sorry, you're motivated by similar things, seeing a need around you, but also what types of things have you been motivated by within your own life, your own experience, to cause you to want to meet needs?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So I know you're motivated by a lot of the things that you see in the community around you. What from your own personal experience has caused you to try to meet needs? Like, I know you're somebody who shares, you're transparent about your story.
I guess for me, so from a personal aspect, it's about just not wanting people to have the same story. So particularly with women and girls, you don't have to have my story. My story isn't the worst story, but it isn't the best story either. And so if I can help somebody not go down a certain path wherever you are in your life, then that's motivation enough for me. So I share that I'm a foster mom, and I only say that so that people understand context, because I don't consider my child a foster child. She's mine. She stuck with me for life. So, but I feel like those kind of being able to create that kind of space for young girls and to see the need in somebody else, give them something that that I had, that I know that in their particular situations they won't get. And so a lot of times, like for me, even just the reason I even started fostering, one of the reasons is because I really wanted to reach teenage girls, which when I said that, everybody was like, are you crazy? Like, why would you, they're already set in their ways, they're this, they're that. But I wanted them because I wanted the ones that no one else wanted. I wanted the ones where people have already given up on, washed their hands with, and I wanted to be able to give them something, because that time for me was such a crucial time. And my mom didn't know how to connect to me. My mom is from Barbados. Culturally, it's just a different experience. So she didn't really know how to be that mothery. She didn't have that. My mom was very just by the book. This is what I said, do it kind of thing. And I wanted to be able to offer a different experience to a young girl in my life. And so that's how I started that focus around helping, taking the help that I was offering to another level with the young women that I've mentored, because I mentored all the time, but I knew it was something more that I needed to be able to give them. And that's how I started in that space. So for me, you know, it's really about, so when I think about what George is saying in his event and sharing your story, you know, my sharing was really about not just so that people know that they are not the only ones with that story, but the opportunity to help people not have that same story was big for me.
I think, let me jump in here, because I think that the reality is that we all, for the most part, right, those of us who aren't doing this as a job, like we're not hired by somebody else, right? For those of us that are doing this work, I think there's absolutely something deeply personal about what makes us do that. And I want to get down into that piece. Like, what is that personal thing that makes you do that? Because a lot of people can get a job. Like, anybody can go out here and apply for a job and do the job they were hired for, right? But what is the personal piece that allows you to connect to the work and to the community? That, so for instance, my work with the Fathering Circle. Fathering Circle is relatively new in terms of the work that I do with fathers. It's only about 4 years old, but I've been a fatherhood advocate for well over 15, going on 20 years. And that came out of the fact that I was a single father. I had custody of my son. I worked in a male-dominated industry that didn't understand why I needed to take time off to go to doctor's appointments and things like that, because in their mind, quote unquote, I literally had somebody tell me this, that you ain't got a wife for that? You don't have somebody else like to do that for you? As a man, we're expected to just, you know, all of that caregiving goes to the woman or the next closest female in our lot, right? And so for me, everything that I've done as a fatherhood advocate comes from two places. One being the parent, a single parent of a young boy, but also being a Black man that grew up without his father, right? And then, like Kirsten said, not wanting someone else to have the same story. In my case, it was my offspring, not wanting my own child to have the same story. So what is it, before, this is for Doug and for Ova, what is that personal thing that connects you to the work, that drive? What is that personal thing that connects you to that, Doug?
Yeah, well, you know, being one of the, like you, Eric, being one of the youngest on the group, I'm retired. I worked in a federal prison for 25 years. And we can go into, you know, that story about mass incarceration. So I knew, you know, just going through that and working in that system, being a part of that system, of course, you know, wanting to make a change when it was done. I hung in there and made a change. But so many Black men, young Black men coming into that system gave me the passion, like, I got to make a difference. Like, I have to make a difference, you know, and that was even before I had a total understanding of what mass incarceration was in accordance with the 1986 anti-drug law. We talk about the disparity in the sentencing. We can go on and on and on. So my thing was, once I got finished with this, once you know, I'm retired now, how do I make a difference? You know, and I'll talk about prison reform. I have a couple of platforms. I've been around the country talking about that. You know, only been with Black Men Heal for 8 months. And when hearing a black man heal in trauma, knowing that these young men, you know, we talk about exonerated 5, going through that system, and real talk, being innocent, but yet proven guilty to live that out, I had to make a difference. So my thing is, I have a passion to do that, to make a difference and tell the story. But anything that I can do to deter that, you know, I have guys on both sides, more or less. Guys that's been incarcerated, guys that worked in the system. And those platforms, we talk about that. So anything that can deter them from, you know what they're doing outside of their communities, whether it's the drugs, the guns, whatever, and understand the consequences that's behind it. You know, they don't understand the consequences when you're talking about 20 years. I'm not talking about going in and out of a county jail, less than 365 days, you see your boy, whatever. I'm talking about your life changing after 10 years, 20 years, where you don't have a family to support you. And that's why I said healed men, heal men, because we need you in the streets, but we need you and Sankofa said it, we need you to impact the next generation. Like my thing is everything's a teachable moment. And then we talk about these stories, like everybody can tell a story, but everybody can't share a story. You understand what I'm saying? Because when you're able to share the story, now I can identify, I can give you a testimony, but then I can tell you how to get out of that situation. So my passion came from the passion of just wanting to make a difference in my community, not to see brothers, sisters too, because it even got worse now with women going in and out of that system. Yeah. So anything that I could do to deter that, to speak on it, then that's what I'm gonna do.
Right. Absolutely. Brother Oba, what's the personal connection to the work? What brings you to it?
Man, I'm fired up about this. And this is right in my wheelhouse. So, I have to give a little bit of background because I come from a hip hop perspective, and it's personal for me because back in the 70s when hip hop started, it was a lot of trouble in the streets, and hip hop literally started for one purpose, which was to give the youth something to do because the fathers were gone from the homes. And so the youth needed something constructive to do. And so what hip hop did was, which is why I do what I do, is it illuminated reading and writing. And that's what a lot of the skill sets with our young Black men now is that they still need reading and writing. But hip hop allowed them to use their reading to read lyrics, to write their own lyrics and share their stories orally, which is the most ancient tradition that we know. And it gave them that skill to do that and to not only read and write, but then to inspire the next generation through the stories told, through the public speaking, through the skills of oration, to just realize like, okay, you shared the story of how you came from the roaches and rats and now you are here. So now that inspired the next generation to say, okay, well then how can I take that to the next level? And then the next generation, how can I take that to the next level? To where you got to me, where I realized, okay, I saw that, I love hip hop is everything that I'm about. So then how can I then teach that same methodology to students in schools? And that's where it came from. I wanted to be, I grew up to be the person that I wish that I had, because I wish that I had a hip hop artist come to my school and teach me math and teach me science and teach me all of the things that I was never taught. And so that's what we literally do. There's a need that needs to be solved. And my favorite quote is, the greatest minds come from the greatest struggle. And that was what hip hop really embodies, is that we're all struggling, but that creates something in you to innovate your way out of that situation. And so the same thing happens with me personally. We see, oh man, I wish that when I was young, a Black man or a Black woman gave me a job. Okay, so what do we need to do? Give the youth jobs. Okay, how do we do that? Here we go, ECO Foundation, education, culture, opportunities, boom, that's the opportunities, whether it's paid or unpaid. We give you a stipend to go serve the community, to give the people in the streets food, because obviously everybody needs food. And so when the pandemic happened, they shut down some of the grocery stores in West Philly. So where did we see the need to serve? We need to give people food. Boom. It was all about what is the need, because the need creates the drive to serve. I just saw something about the man who created email. Email literally started by an Indian man, Dr. Shiva. And basically all that he saw was the same thing that we have in the inbox, the outbox, the drafts, the trash. Those were physical things in the office. All of those things are physical at one point, but then he made the code and made it into literally email. And so he saw that was the need. It wasn't any tech giant that did this. Innovation comes from the streets, always from the struggle. That's where innovation comes from. And so the only way that you can tap in to see what people need is to visualize and see what's going on in your community. And that's what all hip hop does. They see there's crime, there's drugs, there's this. So they talk about it and then uplift it to where it should be. And that's what all that we do at the ECO Foundation. The young ones need jobs. Boom, that's what I wanted when I was young. That's what we give them. The young ones need culture. Okay, that never happened when I was growing up. No Black men and women had a place where you could say, all right, we're going to do libations to start our class. We're going to teach you about your real history and all of those things that need to be taught, whether it's in the schools, whether it's in virtual. And then also the education part. Now we have a place, a center, the Eco Center, where if you didn't have a space before, which I didn't have a place to just go and chill, now kids and adults and anybody in the community has a place in West Philly where there's a need. If you need a place to just blow off some steam and just come through and holler and kick it and still tap in and get some resources, if you need a job, if you need more food, if you need anything that you really need, we have it there at the center. So again, I take the hip hop perspective, and it's personal for me because all I wanted when I was young is all that I'm giving now. And that's basically what it's all about, is that most times when you grow up, you give what you didn't get. And that's the dope thing to me, is that
Give what you didn't get.
get it, you give it now. And sometimes when you didn't get something from your father or your mother, you grow up and give that to the next generation because you never had that. Just like, unfortunately, sometimes it becomes materialistic where, oh, I didn't have the dopest shoes growing up, so I'm gonna give my child the dopest shoes. But
Right.
in this instance, we do it holistically and spiritually. Maybe we didn't get the hip hop love that we wanted, so now I'm gonna just make sure that I give the hip hop love to everybody else, because my parents, they were a little bit more seasoned. They were listening to Roberta Flack and Miles Davis when I was growing up, and they forbid hip hop in the household. So I missed the whole 90s, all of that golden age. I missed 89. All I listened to every day was smooth jazz every day in the car with my dad and gospel music. I never ever got a chance to even hear the 90s. I didn't even know Tupac and Biggie died until 2000, which is crazy, right?
Yeah,
I
listen.
hip hop so late. But
I don't even know if that's a bad thing, though. I don't even know if that's a bad thing, because
I mean,
I'm still hollering "Bad Boys for Life" through the '90s, and that's not a good thing. So
it's wild. Again, that's just what I missed. I missed that whole, and everybody still in my generation talks about it like, man, you missed the '90s, like you missed this thing, and I'm like, man. So when I listen to the songs now, I'm like, these songs aren't even that cool, but
they're not that cool. Exactly. That's what I'm telling you.
I missed the feeling and the energy from growing up listening to it, but now that I listen now, I'm like,
all right. So listen, let me ask you this before we move on to our next question, because clearly hip hop is important to you. It's at the center, right? So at the end, we're gonna have a little cipher. You and Isan, Oba. All right, George, you might want to jump in there. I know you got some bars. No,
Don't forget me. I got some.
I know you got some. That's why I didn't even throw your name out there. She's gonna come in like Queen Bee.
Just the last thing before I let you see your point is that's what hip hop is. It's the energy. Then all of a sudden people want to cycle, and all of a sudden people want to do this, and that's what it is. Hip hop gives you jobs that work with your hands, and that's what's missing. You can DJ and make money with your hands. You can use whatever, even if you don't have anything at all, you can beatbox.
What's the power of your voice?
If you don't have anything at all, you can break dance and make money. If you don't have anything at all, you can graffiti and do what you need to do. Like, that's what hip hop does, and that's all that we strive to do, is just
excellent.
Nothing at all. You still have yourself and your resources, and you still have hip hop to make a way, and that's what providing strive.
All right, well, we're gonna bring you back on for our virtual cipher and hip hop. You know what I mean? We got that. Isan, that's my man. Go ahead, Isan. I know you got something to add to that.
I do believe in the power of the voice through hip hop. I'm actually going to set this question up for Doug. Some of the things Oba just talked about made me think about how, like, what ministry looks like, or just serving the community in whole. You see a need and you meet that need. And he talked about seeing that need and meeting it. People need food. Like, this 2020 is a beast. Like, it's been a lot of needs. There's been needs for grief support when Kobe died. It's been needs for people to talk about what they're experiencing with the pandemic, and not just people getting sick, but people losing jobs, people losing loved ones, people being afraid to go outside, just people seeing the world differently. But then also what the pandemic did, even before we started seeing more police deaths and all other types of racial motivated killings, we also saw that our economic circumstances put us in an environment where we're actually more susceptible to catching something that could take our lives. COVID was impacting our communities a little more because we're in close quarters. We have less resources, the food that we're provided. This climate provided something that was a perfect opportunity to meet a need. And that's one of the things I love about my relationship with the Lord. Everything I read about God in the Bible was about him seeing a need and meeting it. It wasn't just, let me save your soul. It was, hold up, somebody throwing rocks at you. Let me stop them rocks from hitting you and then you trust me, and now you can take some other lessons I want to talk to you about, such as meeting my father or walking a different kind of way. All right, you got this other issue, you got blood, or whatever the issues are, God met needs. So I wanted to talk to Doug because you talked about how Hillman, and it lined up with something that Oba said. Oba was talking about being motivated by not having a father in a certain way or whatever. I realized like a lot of people are motivated either in negative directions or in superbly positive directions by neglect or abuse. If you don't have your father, you can go the same route and not care about kids, or you could be the opposite and say, I'll never give what I didn't have. Or you be somebody who was physically abused and you become an advocate for making sure people have their voices heard and that they're actually able to receive compassion and to actually be able to bring about social change. Given our current social climate, I want to know, like, what are some of the ways that Black Men Hills has spoken to the current climate right now that we're in? Like, and it's a lot of climates, but the current climate that we're in, and you can just go wherever you want with that, Doug.
Yeah, well, one, because of, you know, what's going on in our community concerning Black men and trauma, like everybody wants to know now. You know, there are, you know, nonprofit organizations and agencies. Everybody's concerned now. There's a light on. Like you talked about this gentleman raising money in reference to, you know, white people wanting to know. So everybody wants to know. If everybody has a rational mind as far as what's going on in the world, they want to reach out to find out how, you know, what's going on with the Black man. Why is he facing so much trauma? So what has happened is those platforms are starting to come to us from nonprofits, corporately, community leaders. They're reaching out to Black Men Heal, such like this, a podcast, and where the voice is being explained as far as what you can do within your environment, how to deal with trauma, self-care, all those things. Now, the other thing that we just did, and I'll put it out to all your panelists, we put out a thing on Sundays at 7:00 p.m. called King's Corner. This was somewhat the spinoff of Black Men Heal because we was in, you know, in COVID. So what that is it's a virtual free space for men to come in. We ask, you know, you can be a therapist or clinician or leader like you guys are to talk about a specific subject for men and offer that free space for them to talk about it. Of course, you have to have the skills to facilitate, such as this group, have the skills to have knowledge of the subject matter, but we open up space because now what has happened because of Black Men Healed and the, you know, those free therapy sessions, now we've been bombarded. It was actually, you know, for Philadelphia. Now we're reaching the tri-state and mark my words, the nation and globally. You guys said it before. Now what we have to do is, you know, we work in numbers. We have to collaborate within ourselves. It can't be a competition. You know what I mean? It can't be a competition because we're all in this fight. You know what I mean? We're all in it. So when we get together and we operate in the masses to make a difference, now we start to understand it. But it's the thing is, Black Men Heal offered that virtual free space for men to actually, you know, just come in and I mean, we had guys come in. I mean, you know, of course we recorded. And the reason why we record is because we need the data. You know, even what you talk about, you talk about trauma, you talk about surveys, you talk about data that's being collected. Even that's one-sided. You know, we're not, you know, versus a white person, you're not going to have the same type of trauma. Like nobody, us as people, I'll tell you one thing, us as people, we adapt, we adjust, and we overcome. I don't care what the situation is. So we're able to do that. So Black Men Heal always is constantly trying to seek, you know, with other groups as far as collaboration to, you know, host this event of actually, you know, getting together like this podcast. And I see down the road, once this, you know, COVID-19 this thing is over, then there's a big thing throughout the whole city where we're all are there, whether it's tables, whether it's, you know, music, whatever, we all are there to talk about each other's program. And once again, the other thing too is we got to support one another. We talked about the raising money, like, you know, Black Men Heal. The fact when it really started is when we went, you know, shout out to Taz, Tank, and Zakia. They went on the Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God. And what happened is he donated $10,000. And through that show, money started pouring in. But the key to it is, when we talk about the numbers, it could be 50 cents. You know what I mean? It don't have to. And I think even for us, as far as supporting each other, we always think, you know, when somebody asks about a donation, that we got to give 100, we got to give 250, we got to give $500. No, you can give $1. Every dollar counts.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So, you know, just, you know, bring it back. You know, we just set up that forum with King's Corner, and now the opportunity has actually risen in all platforms, community, corporately, to go out and speak about trauma within our communities.
Hey, Doug, let me jump in because I actually had a chance to attend at least 2 of the King's Corner sessions. And I love what you said about collaboration, because I believe it was my brother Taj Murdoch who connected me with King's Corner, right? And you know Taj from Men of Courage and Team Inc. The Eco Foundation, Kyle the Conductor, he's also someone who's connected. So I think the thing that we have to build on, and I actually have some other collaborations. I'll talk to you after the show program is off, because there's other organizations that are affiliated
Absolutely.
here and represented by the people here that we haven't actually talked about previously. But that is that idea of, you know, it makes me think of the African proverb, you know, when spider webs unite, right? Spider webs unite, it can tie up a lion. That's the reality of what networking is about, of staying connected and staying and collaborating. And so I look forward to that, because again, it aligns with everything that we're seeing. And I think Oba said it earlier about that the quarantine, COVID-19, the pandemic has simply highlighted the disparities in our community, but it's also shown a light on those who are most effective and doing the work in a way that directly impacts people. So, Isan, I'm not sure if you had a question for our guest.
No, I want to say something though. Wait.
Okay.
No, Isan doesn't have a question.
Nope,
That
not
wasn't a question. I wanted Kirsten and George to talk.
Go ahead.
No, I wanted to speak to, just kind of add on to the collaboration piece. It's like, I think that sometimes, and I know Doug was referencing, like, I think it was Doug talking about the competition, like, you know, somebody was talking about competition, like there's no competition in this, right? I think what happens sometimes where we get lost is that everything that's being offered is needed. It's needed by different people in different ways. We all technically do the same type of work, but we don't do it the same way. We're not reaching the same people. How I communicate is going to be different from how Doug communicates. You know, everything is vital. And so the collaboration is necessary to get the entire job done, right? When we're doing it in silo, we're only addressing one part, one facet of the situation. We cannot in totality address the issue at large. And to your point about a proverb I've never heard before, with the spider web, that you can take down a whole lion. I can only, if I'm doing it by myself, I can only maybe get his paw, right? But when we all collectively, we all have a part to play in this collaboration in order to get the bigger picture done. And so when we think from a bigger picture aspect, collaboration is key, is vital. I'm definitely going to be connecting with whoever I haven't already connected with before this is over. But it's necessary because Oba has a space, right? I don't have a space, but Oba has a space. But I have something to bring to the space, you know.
We all have a space.
Exactly. So because Oba has a space, we all have a space. And that's the kind of mindset and language that we have to use. So thank you. So because Oba has a space, we all have a space, you know, because it's for the community. And as I'm a member of the community, right? So because of that, I have a space, and we have to be open in that way to be able to share the gifts that God has given us to give, not to keep in a hoard for ourselves. It's not about me, you know, it's about the work at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day. So the collaboration is so necessary. And I just want to shout out to Blackman Hill, because that heal men thing is like real powerful for me as a woman to hear, because getting to that whole thing about women trying to fix men, right? Trying to change them, fix them, heal them, deliver them, set them free, all that. But it really takes a healed man to help another man really heal. That is important for women to be able to hear, women to be able to see and experience the results of that. It looks different from my conversations with men, because I'm gonna touch you in a way that is different. I'm gonna touch your spirit. Let me be clear. I'm gonna touch your spirit in a way that's different from you speaking to your brother. You know what I mean? Who can share and identify with things that, as a woman, I just can't. And especially in a time and a place where there are so many fathers that aren't able to be present. I'm not going to say absent. They're just not able to be present in this moment. Being able to have other men that are healed to speak to that, because just because a father is present doesn't mean that he is healed. But to be able to speak to that to our young men coming up is really important. So I definitely am all on board with Black men. Wait a minute, what did I say?
That's what we do.
Black men heal, yeah.
Yeah. Black men heal. And so, yes, that's absolutely neat. And so I appreciate you bringing up this part about family and like a woman's perspective on this idea. I want to go towards the youth, and I really want to, the three of you have specifically talked about young people, right? So I want to go to George first, and I really want to kind of go from George to Oba to Kirsten and talk about your program, your interaction with young people. Well, George, you talked about how you had just started the program with the young girls at the school when quarantine started, and you had to figure out a way to bring that in digitally, virtually. Oba, I know that you guys have been working with young people for a very long time, but now that you have that space, I want to talk about some of the impacts and things that you've seen. And I also want the three of you, not to exclude you, Doug, at the end, you can chime in, but the three of you specifically to talk about what you are hearing from young people about their perspective, about where they are right now and what the future looks like. So George, tell us a little bit about the program that you have with the young girls, what you did with them and what their perspectives are, considering where we at right now.
Yeah, so I've had the idea for the program for about a couple years, and this is like the first time of me actually doing it full-fledged. But it's actually funny, like when I originally started the program, I started off with financial literacy, you know what I mean, and talking about people that they should know about and stuff, and things that I wish I would have knew when I was in high school. And them kids was knocked out in that classroom when I went up there and did my first workshop. They wasn't paying attention at all, and that's when I realized like there's a whole piece that I was missing. Like, how are these kids supposed to focus on financial literacy when they got to worry about what they gonna eat when they get home? How are these kids supposed to focus on job readiness or motivational speakers when they got to worry about getting abused at home, or they got to worry about trying to look good for the next person, whatever the case may be, what this person thinks about me. And so I had to really get to the root of the trauma, that the kids was first facing, and give them a space to be vulnerable and talk about it so they can address it, And so I came up with the idea, okay, how is it that I can create a space of vulnerability and get, because it's kind of difficult to get used to open up about those different experiences. It's not something that they're used to talking about, And so the first thing that I did, I had started off, I had about 5 girls in like each grade. That's how I started off. I had about 20 at first. But it's like the first question that I asked them was, after telling them about myself, and I asked them, what has been your darkest moments? And they looked at me like, huh? They wasn't sure what to say, like nobody's ever asked them those type of questions.
Yeah, that's kind of a personal question to come out the
right. Mm-hmm. And so, but they were there for it. And so they started talking, and they started speaking, and they started crying, and it was the most, like, I cried, like watching them, because they were like, we don't talk about this type of stuff, like we can't talk about it at home. My friends is the only place where I feel comfortable. That's why I love being at school so much, and it's the only place where I really feel safe, And one thing that I realized, that one of the youth that I had speak at the event, his name was Rashid, and one thing that he basically said to the group of adults that were in the circle was that we are the way that we are because of our parents, is what he said in a sense. And so, and I said to him, I asked him a few questions, but I was like, in a sense, you're saying that our adults, in order for our youth to, to be where we want them to be, our adults need to treat their traumas, basically what you're trying to say. He was like, yes. And so I realized that there's so much, the reason why and I hate it when I see, our adults talking down on our children, you know what I mean? And saying, oh, they're doing this wrong or they're doing that wrong, and they rowdy on the trolleys or whatever the case may be. But it's like, we got to understand that it starts from home, you know what I mean? And I think that what I've been preaching the most to our adults, and which is what I've been hearing from the youth, is that like we have to treat the trauma that's going on within our homes, within each and every one of us, in order to kind of show them what that looks like. You know what I mean? Show them what it looks like to have those type of conversations. Because I grew up with both parents in a household as well, and it's like, but we didn't have those type of conversations. You know what I mean? In regards to who we actually are as people, what our culture is, and like Obo was talking about, what our culture is, what it means to heal, you know what I mean? What are the things that they've been through? What are the things that they need to heal from, and how it is that they've been through, you know what I mean? And so it's like, we need to start having those vulnerable conversations within a house first and foremost, so that way they get a sense of who they are as individuals, and they don't have to go searching for it within their friends at school, or when they're outside in public. So it's like, we really have to it starts from within the home in regards to addressing our own trauma, so that way we can kind of give them permission to do the same thing and give them the tools that they need to heal.
Okay, so it starts in the home. So Obo, tell us, what are you seeing with young people that come to the Eco Foundation that you're enjoying?
Okay, so I won't go through the whole laundry list of things. I want to keep it succinct for everybody, but just the first thing is that resources, right? Kids and adults need resources. So that's the first thing that we provide them with, whether it's toiletries, whether it's food, whether it's things that they need for hygiene, whether you are male or female. And then also give them the opportunity to deliver those things to the people in the community, so they can see that it does take a and they can be a part of that experience. Because I think that's something that, I personally miss, was seeing the fact that you can go and knock on people's doors. It's okay. You don't have to be a stranger in your own neighborhood. It's okay to knock on your neighbor's door and say, what's up? Say, what do you need? I know that that's kind of like a block captain's thing, but we're trying to create this now for the kids, so that way they know what it is, so we don't miss that again and have a generation gap. So that way the kids know, look, we can go knock on anybody's door in our community and say what's up and say what
is that. So let me jump in real quick. Is that what they are saying to you they need? Or like, what is the young person's perspective? So I understand they might show up in need of a resource, right? But what is their perspective on their community? What is their perspective on the future? What's their perspective on how they even got into those situations? So like George talked about, we're in this situation as young people because of our parents. And the only way we can solve it is through the home. What are young people saying to you? Because I think one of the biggest challenges is that we keep talking about young people, but we're not all talking to young people. And I think the three of you specifically, and to a certain extent Doug as well, because I don't know how young Black men, what age range Black Men Heal serves, but I'm sure that there's some overlap, right? And so what is it that they are saying that they need or that they recognize is either broken or as a solution?
Okay, thank you for helping me refocus. What they've told us is that they need a voice, and that, again, like you said, people talk at them, people talk about them, talk to them, but don't talk with them. And that's the major thing that we've realized, is that they need a voice. When you think about the radio stations, everybody on the radio stations is what, 30 plus, maybe close to under 20, maybe. When you look at, who is in running the major things, even running the major foundations, even people like us, it's usually not somebody that is 16, 17, 14, or 13. So what they're saying is, give us a chance now. We don't want to wait until we have, quote unquote, bills and responsibilities to pay. Give us the opportunity today. Let us start our own foundations. Let us be a part of Black Men Heal. And so I'm glad that you said it because that reminded me like, okay, one of the initiatives that I was getting ready to start is that every time I go somewhere, I need a young person with me. Every time that each one of us are occupying a space, we need a young person with us at all times so they can see, all right, they wake up at this time, they go do this at this time. This is how you talk to somebody on the phone. This is how you set up a meeting. This is how you set up an event. If you are doing Black Men Heal, this is how you heal. If you are a girl genius, this is the things that you need to do to become a girl genius. This is so I can follow, not just, all right, now I can see it on the TV, but just be right there. Just kind of as an apprentice kind of sort of. We need spaces and safe spaces to where wherever you go as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, you have a young person or a group of young people with you so that way they see it now when they're young. Because I think that's what George is talking about, is that sometimes you miss those things. You miss those nuggets. You can't, it's like real time experience. You know, you can't wait till you're an intern at 22 trying to get a quote unquote job. Like, give them the skill set now. Put them right in the welding. Put them right into everything that they need to be. Every adult at this stage in our lives need a young person, no matter where you go, whether it's your job, whether it's your network, whether it's your training for your own foundation. You need a young person there, and they want to be there. That's the thing. They want to be. We do podcasts with them all the time. They love doing podcasts and have their voice heard, and they want to be on the radio. These young people are ready. They're hungry and they want it. And so
you can hear them in the background.
You got one.
Right. So that's, to answer your question, that's what it is have, and again, practice what you preach. So I will definitely say that I will do that. And I think that we need to as adults, hold each other accountable for doing that as well.
Yeah,
I 2021 was around, we should have that initiative going strong.
I want to add to that a little bit before we jump to Kirsten, because I have been involved in like mentoring programs and rites of passage programs for a very long time. And I feel like, particularly just across the country, period, the phrase mentor has become like a catchphrase. Like, people just throw it out there and not even really understanding that that's what a mentor does. Everything that you just described, like literally guiding young people, not just always like over the phone, not just an occasional conversation once a month. Like, there is much more collaborative, hands-on. You know, I love the fact that you used the phrase apprentice, right? I came up through the building trades, and so I know what it means to be an apprentice. That means you are connected to a journeyman, someone who has experience, who has knowledge, and you are shadowing that person in a way that you are picking up that skill set that they are showing you in a way that empowers you to be able to do that same profession, the same job at some point in time. So thank you for sharing that. So Kirsten, what have you been seeing? What have you been hearing?
So it's not much different, so I'm not going to repeat, but definitely everything that George is saying, everything that Oba is saying as well. I get that voice thing is heavy amongst the young folks, and I think that we saw that we saw evidence of that with the racial tension that's been going on. It's been the opportunity for them to be able to really, 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 really share their voice. I think that's important. And then the mentor piece, but I think that one of the things that my daughter brought up to me was the experience. So for her, what she has experienced being my child, she wants and sees a need to be able to offer that to other young girls as well. And so for her, it's like, how do we duplicate the experience on a larger scale so that other young girls can experience what she has been privileged to experience through her relationship with me. And I get that a lot when I'm working with the young girls in my life, is how do we duplicate this, right? Also, just to kind of piggyback on what Oba was saying, I'm going to add to this challenge and this initiative that all of us have these nonprofits. It should be young people on our boards, period, in the story. Like, we can't serve them without them. So because anything other than that is what you were referencing, Eric, as it relates to talking about them, but not with them. And so how do we have programs for them that they don't get to have a voice and input on? Like we can't continue to have boards that govern young people where young people aren't the governors. So that's my challenge to all of us as we continue to expand the work that we do. But yeah, so I just echo Oba and George, everything that they shared as it relates to what the young people are saying.
Okay.
Real quick. I just want to make a quick point.
Yeah, and Doug, I'm gonna go to you and after.
Yeah, I know that Doug has to go. I just want to make a quick point to that initiative is where we may, I won't say drop the ball, but there was a chance. We had a chance if we did have this program going when that racial stuff was going on, and all the young people were downtown, and we had a couple of us went downtown and we saw throngs of young people. And if only we were there with them, because they were there, they were ready, they were energized. Yes. And we failed them. We were not there with them. We were there. We went down there and they were there. And they were saying all types of stuff like, let's go do this, let's go down. We were like, yo, young fella, you don't want to really do that. Like, but and it was just, we went down there it was like the last day we went down and it wasn't as many as it was the first day. But I'm like, man, if we had mobilized, adults and went down there with them and then broke them down and said, look, y'all go do this, you go do this. And then we could have kept that same energy going. And who knows where we would be today.
Well, I want to give you a bit of hope, right? Because there are young people organizations that are around doing that and have been doing that. I want to give a shout out to Philly Student Union, right? Because there was throngs of young people from day one that were out there protesting everything from, the COVID impact on the school system to George Floyd to you name it, right? And so when you talk about collaborations, like I definitely want to reach out. If anybody is watching this program that might be connected to Philly Student Union or any other youth organization that is connected, I see George waving his hand. Let's make sure that we start building those bridges and creating that spider web to connect people. But I want to go to Doug, right? Because a lot of what you three have shared, I get the sense that it overlaps with what Doug, what you experienced in your former career in the criminal justice system, but also in the work that you do in Black Men Heal. So talk about that piece about the voice, and talk about what came up for you when you start hearing what our young people are sharing and saying.
I mean, the first thing, shout out to them, because the first thing was voice. Black Men Heal we did have a segment where we encourage guys to bring the younger guys in to, just to hear the conversation that we were talking about. And I think it goes back to something that you said in regards to mentor, in regards to apprentice, because you can't fool the young people anymore. You say, if you're going to mentor, you're going to mentor. What has happened is mentors have actually kind of dropped the ball because they've not stuck with the program. So, and they recognize that. We got to understand each other. I've been around for a few days, so to speak, but we got to understand these generations. Now we in Gen Z. And you said it, they want their voice to be heard. Like now, everything on social media, everything is look at me. It's just like we're saying, look at me, they're saying, listen to us. One thing that I used to think about was stop, look, and listen. So stop and acknowledge them, look to observe them, but not judgmental. And then listen for them to be heard. That's the thing that we don't do. Especially, I say, I'm a baby boomer in my generation, that you have a tendency to look at younger generations either as your, let's say your kids, your grandkids. So right there, your approach, and that's where you have to have the opportunity to listen to them, because your approach is probably going to come from a parental type of approach. They don't want that. They want to be heard. So you have to now understand them to facilitate that conversation. Just in the streets, you'll have young boys, you walk into a crowd, they may grit on you. My response used to be like, my man, you okay? Because you don't look good. You know what I mean? And that breaks that ice. but now we can have that conversation. And it's, you know, we talked about it. It's okay not to be okay. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, that is like the biggest thing that even with Black Men Heal that I stress, like, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to have problems and issues. Now we link together, or we can talk about it for you to get that out of your system. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing is we just got to listen to these young folks because they're the next leaders. Like I'm looking for the next. I love the fact what Oba said in regards to bringing somebody with him to everywhere he goes. I had a young boy that I did within my church. We was putting on a program, and I took him. I said, look, I want you to see everything that I'm doing. You know, who I talk to. Same thing he said. Who I talk to, who I greet, how I extend my hand and right hand of fellowship. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to actually concentrate on young people, but we got to listen to them. We don't have to talk, because what we do as adults sometimes, we have a tendency to cut people off or cut young people off and don't allow them to express themselves. Allow them to express yourself. That's the whole thing. You talk about the biggest thing out of all this. And I even go back what Isan said when he's talking about those instruments and, you know, one being a mic and one being a speaker. So the biggest part of what all that we're doing is the communication piece. We got to learn how to communicate. We got to learn how to be the active listeners. You know, everybody was taught how to be the active listener. You hear it, you repeat it, and now we got this two-way thing of feedback. So now they know that you understood them. So the biggest thing is, you know, and my point is, we got to listen. My mother used to tell me, boy, in order for you to listen, you got to close your mouth. You know, it's just that simple.
It's that simple.
I just want to say something real quick to that. So that whole idea about, you know, adults listening, at the end of the day, it comes to this, right? Whether you respect them and feel that what they say is worth hearing. And so when you talk about respect and worth, this is why, you know, Rashi would say that, you know, we it starts with us, right? It starts at home. We know that. But you teach me my worth when you determine whether or not what I say has value. So if you're always shutting me up or cutting me off, then what you're telling me is my voice doesn't matter and it doesn't have any worth or value.
Yeah.
So when I need to speak, I'm not going to speak because I don't have worth and value from the person that brought me here, right? Or the adults that, quote unquote, kind of govern me, have authority over me. They don't feel like I have worth and value, so I'm going to stop talking when I should be talking. And so we have to get to a place as adults and recognize that their voice has as much worth and value as anyone else's, sometimes more. And because they're going to keep it all the way real, right? They're not going to cover it up for you. And I think that's where we struggle as adults, is because it's too raw for us sometimes. But that's what we need. You know, we need the raw and uncut version. We don't need the cover up. That's what we do all day at work and at school and wherever else. Like, you need the raw and uncut version. So listen to them. They have worth and they have value, and know that when you tell them to be quiet and when you choose to tune them out or cut them off, what you're telling them is that they don't have value. So I think those are things that we just have to remember, what our words are saying to them and what our actions say to them as it relates to their self-esteem and how they see themselves.
And I just want to say too, because again, with the fatherhood piece, I see and hear this all the time, especially from older men, right? That's why I appreciate what you said, Doug, about, you know, the attitude of a lot of adults is, you know, they still stuck on this children should be seen and not heard, right? And that's an old school philosophy, right? But these kids nowadays, they ain't trying to hear that, because a lot of their parents have dropped the ball and they've tried to do what they were asked to do and tried to be, you know, silent and be led, and they were often led astray or led down the wrong path. And so that reminds me, one of the things that I want to say is, and I'm making this statement now, MBK Cares, I feel like we will, during the month of September, probably later in the month, I feel like that we should do a youth-led program, like, and actually allow them, give them the space, give them the floor, and sit back and hear what they have to share and have to say. So we will be reaching out to you guys for you to recommend some young people to serve in that position.
And I just want to correct something. I don't want to say that their parents by themselves had let them down. We as a community share that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
We share that as it relates to letting them down, because we all play a part in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we definitely have to own that responsibility. I'm not saying you weren't, but I just want that to be clear for everyone.
No, absolutely, and I'm glad you made that distinction, because I don't want there to be any confusion in relation to that. Like when we talk about young people and older people, I'm talking about generations, period. And again, it goes back to this concept of mentorship and apprenticeship, and understanding even the concept of a rite of passage, which I'm a strong believer that I feel like that our communities need to fall back into and adopt rites of passage ceremonies, right? Because that is a literal way of handing over, passing the baton to people. So you can't stay in leadership positions forever. Even the adults, and we say this, I say the same thing about our elected officials and leadership. Anybody in a leadership position, you should know that there is an end to your time in that position, and you should be grooming your replacement, because they want it. They're watching you. And for as much as we want to tell people to be quiet and watch and listen, they're already doing that. We already know that children are sponges, right? It's at that point, and I think this is why this concept of voice is so important. It comes a time when all the listening and all the paying attention and all the hearing and doing it, all of that is for a purpose, and it's eventually for it to turn around and for them to be able to express themselves. And if we don't get out of the way and allow them that opportunity to express themselves, this is what's going to happen. Oba, I love the fact that you took it back to hip hop and understanding the origin of hip hop, right? A lot of people just think of it as party music, but the reality is that, again, it did give people an opportunity to voice their beliefs, right? And a lot of the original music in hip hop, it was party music, but it was also bravado and braggadocio, where people talked about, I'm the best MC, I got the best clothes, I got this. They talked about their self-worth, right? And then on top of it, we talked about what was happening in the community and what was happening in society around us. So I just want to put that out there. If anybody's watching and listening, we definitely want to be able to get some young people involved and actually give them the stage, give them the mic, put them in front of this system, and sit back and listen to what they have to share. Isan, did you want to jump in at any point, Isan?
Absolutely. So there's a couple things I want to say, and then I want everyone to share some contact resources. I've put several resources, websites, and different things that you all have in the comments on Facebook, so that people can look into what you have. I also put a link up there for something called the Black Resilience Fund. They have a webinar that's going to take place in September. I believe it's September the 27th or the 17th. I'll check the date again. I know it had a 7 in it. But that organization that I talked about in Portland, they raised $1.5 million in a little bit over a month to give back to their community. And they now have a webinar that they're going to give out free in order to teach other people in other cities how they can model such a thing. So I thought that was really decent, because a lot of the things we discussed tonight, it's about creating a model. Like, and being a village means that I'm not trying to big up anybody else in this village. Like, I realize, like, we all are trying to go forward. We're all on the same train. You might be on this cart, you might be on this cart, but we all on the same train. We all trying to go forward. And if we realize that, then we don't try to derail the train and try to make it crash so that any of us get hurt. So I appreciate the way that this conversation went, because all of us recognize that we had something to offer. I also want to speak to understanding what conviction is. I had an opportunity to speak on a panel maybe about a month and a half ago, actually, with one of the founders of Black Men Hill. I believe it was Zakia. Is that the name of one of the founders? And I remember Malik Boyd was on there, and I reached a point of conviction because I realized we both have we have mental health focused organizations, and we haven't collaborated on anything. And that night, she and I decided, like, you know what, we're going to work together. And this is one of the ways. We've had Reginald Howard on one of the episodes as well, but realizing, like, all we had to do is invite people to a seat at the table and make ourselves available for their seats as well. And conviction is not just about guilt, but it's about changing the direction you're going in after it. So the conviction is like, you know what, I can work together, not just to feel bad, but you know what, let me feel motivated to move differently. And I hope that everybody feels a level of conviction tonight to move differently, because a lot of the things that can become stumbling blocks, we could tell people like, yo, if you go this way, that's ahead. You don't have to go that route. You can get your paperwork done. You can do this. Like just showing people a way so that they don't go through the same type of obstacles that you had to go through. And I think that that's important. I have to make sure I acknowledge, yeah, Philly, the youth empowerment for is it advancement
Right.
hangout.
Yeah.
James A and Kendra, they have an incredible model that they've created to create dialogue and give young people a voice and give young people a chance to have economic power. And they've created an incredible model that I know is working. And this is not for things to be competitive. It's for us to look and see what's working and try to model the same system. And I know that those people who create these kind of models want people to come and walk alongside them. They've invited the police. They have police sitting in rooms full of young teenagers in the middle of one of the biggest murder epidemics that we ever seen in Philly. And they're bringing young people in a room so that teenagers and police are able to sit down and communicate and build relationships so that they can realize they're all people. The kids are people, the police officers are people, and they're all trying to make it home at night and trying to be better tomorrow than they are yesterday. I want to toss a question that we actually have from one of our Facebook audience. And I want to also encourage everybody to allow competition to motivate you, but not cause you to hate other people. If you compare yourself to other people, you will either look down on yourself or on others. So it's important that you only compare yourself to the person in the mirror and try to make yourself a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday. It's important to not look down on yourself or on other people. And if the things you consume cause you to feel that way, unfollow some people, even if it's somebody positive. I've had times when I looked at something positive and it caused envy inside because I wasn't ready for whatever I needed to be doing. If that's your place, don't follow something that causes you to constantly feel envious. But look inside. Do the type of soul searching and healing that Black Men Heal are advocates for, so that you look inside and see the broken pieces and make sure that you fill them with things that have nothing to do with other people, with God, with time with self, with just awakening. I want to give this question to George because I think it's important, and then we're going to allow everybody a chance to share your resources. Thank you to Ty McCoy for giving us some incredible questions for our panel tonight. And this question comes from actually my Aunt Iris. George, is there a component in your program for parental healing or participation, since children do learn what they live and what they learn? You're muted, George.
So yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So right now, I don't have a component to where parents are involved, although that's something that I wanted to do. The goal that, because I couldn't do it because like the COVID stuff, but what I wanted to do originally was do a family roundtable, right, with the youth who I have in my program. And so the youth who are in a program, after we kind of do our initial introductions and we have our discussions around their experiences around trauma and, you know, what kind of healings looks like, I wanted to bring their parents to the table to also join in on the discussion. But it's something that's kind of difficult to do. You know what I mean? But that's definitely something that I thought of in the past. And I think that is important because it takes, like, how can I explain it? Like, I can give the youth the tools to heal and stuff like that, but they still got to go home and deal with those things at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I feel like I want to have a space where I kind of have everybody have a seat at the table. And I think that's something that we saw at the event on Saturday, where we had a lot of adults sitting at the table and sharing their perspectives. But it's not something that I have right now, but I definitely feel like it's important to kind of create that space where youth and parents are at the table having discussions around their experiences and healing, and, you know, kind of like the reasons for why things are the way that they are right now.
Thank you. And thank you, Iris, for that question. As we pass this opportunity around, in closing, I want everybody to take two things as you close. Just remember these two thoughts. One, I would like you to share your resources verbally, but I'll also posted some things in the content of our Facebook page. and I also have posted things in our promotional materials. I want everyone to say how people can find out more about your organization. But before that, I want every one of you to say, how are you practicing self-care for yourself? Because I realized, and this is something that I've reiterated the same thought over and over again. Last September, on September the 9th, there were two people who were big helpers for mental health advocacy, and they both took their lives the same day. You had the pastor from the mega church in California, and then you had the director of the University of Pennsylvania Counseling and Therapy Department. They both were helpers, and they took their own lives. So people who knew what help looks like, knew what the role of community looks like, and they still found a reason to leave here. I'm not saying suicide is the only thing. People may lean on alcohol, drugs, gambling, abuse, sex, all types of things in order to have outlets. What are you doing that is a healthy way to take care of yourself while being an advocate to heal your community and work as a village? And then what are some of the resources that people can follow you on? And try to keep that under a minute or so just so we can close out. I'll start with you, George, while you have the microphone on.
Okay, cool. So for me, I feel like self-care has really been growing spiritually. I feel like previously I was doing things on my own and trying to take control of the situations, but I really had to kind of let go and learn how to build a stronger relationship in God and doing what it is that He wants me to do, rather than doing what it is that I want to do. I feel like since I've been doing that, I've started to see things flourish because it's no longer about myself. It's really about God on the mission that He kind of has for me. And in regards to how people can contact me, you can reach me on Instagram at George Cephas or at Survival to Success. I'm looking to start doing more community events. We'll probably be having another one in a couple of weeks at Malcolm X Park, centered around trauma and healing. And I'm also working on a new magazine. It was a book at first, but I'm turning it into a magazine where I'm going to be sharing the stories of experiences of pain and trauma within our community. And so if anybody would like to be a part of that, I'll be creating a Facebook group soon called Healing the Black Community. So please reach out to me on social media, George Cephas, or email at george.cephas@gmail.com.
Great job. Oba?
Peace and love. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. Self-care. Before the pandemic, it was basketball. Going to the gym and putting up some shots. I'm not gonna lie, that's my thing. But since that kind of closed down the gyms, it's really just been this right here, linking up with like-minded individuals, whether it be virtually or in person, and just ironing out how we're going to help each other. Because that's how I get fulfilled, is fulfilling my destiny, literally. And this is what I've been called to do. So, this greatly helps, because sometimes, like a person said, you just home alone and you're not really doing anything. So just getting that energy from the community and sharing it and passing it along is definitely fulfilling for me. It refills my cup, so then I can go do it again. So that's self-care for me. And then also having time in the morning before my daughter wakes up, and my queen wakes up, before the house starts moving and grooving, getting that hour and a half before they wake up, just sit in silence and just meditate and plan out my day before so many different factors happen with my daughter. So just getting that time to really just be by myself is crucial for me. But contact information, Instagram at the Eco Foundation. Also, my personal one is Oba, the number 1 Sankofa. That's also Instagram. You can also reach us on Facebook at the Eco Foundation. Just put that in. And then also, as Brother Eric said, we opened up the grand opening for the Eco Center at 5411 Market Street. It's 24/7. So just come through whenever you need to. Obviously, give us a heads up if you're coming super, super late. I'll let you in and we can wrap. But normal business hours, as always, that's where you can find us. And always just know that we'll be that's it. That's it.
Kirsten?
So for me, self-care has looked like reading, starting meditation, definitely more into my spiritual walk and journey, giving myself permission not to be okay. If I'm not okay, and that's just okay. And then traveling.
Yeah.
So even even in the midst of a pandemic, I will not stop living. I know a lot of people that went from fear of dying to fear of living. And so for me, it's still important that was the thing that I did to take care of me, was travel. And so I have to continue it, and I just pray about the rest. So as far as contacting me, so I'm gonna start off with the nonprofit, which is where we do the treat the trauma, where our focus is on treating trauma. So that's LOTS Inc. LOTSINC.org. That's our site. And as far as Instagram, you can get me at I am a girl genius. And I'm also at Inspire Me and the number 2C. So any of those, and I'm same thing on Facebook.
I don't know if you said this, but you just showed that you're traveling. Did you tell everybody where you actually are? Because I know where you are.
I'm in Mexico.
Yeah, so just to follow up, with our show last week, we talked about having some viewers in Toronto that we were speaking into existence, and you went the total opposite direction. So we now have a panelist in Mexico. Thank you.
Yes,
yeah.
Mexico's representing today.
And then I want to bring the mic to Brother Doug. I appreciate you. Black Men Hill is blessed to have you. Thank you for joining them this year. You joined at the perfect year, man. They needed you, and I appreciate you, brother. I want to know, like, what types of things are you doing for self-care, and where are places that people can reach out to you?
Yeah. I'll put out the social media sites for Black Men Heal. That's on Facebook and Instagram. Same thing. Our new thing was King's Corner, Facebook and Instagram. Douglas Reed on Facebook and also Instagram. The thing for me for self-care, actually, like real talk, was just recently being able to go to the barber. Like I come from, being raised and going to the barber, all the time, and I was going to the barber like every week. That's just how it came up. Self-care my self-care, I enjoy, too bad I ain't in Mexico, but I enjoy waterfronts. I enjoy sitting at the waterfront listening or being at peace, listening to the still water and getting that peace. Also self-care. I thought it initially before I joined Black Men Heal, I thought it was, physically, spiritually, and mentally. But, learning about self-care, there's 8 dimensions of wellness. And I'll just repeat, it's socially, emotionally, spiritual, intellectually, physically, environmentally, financially, and occupational. Like that took me personally to a whole nother level, because that's the balance that I strive to be in my life. That not just those ones that we know, but those 8 dimensions of wellness took me to a whole nother level. And honestly, conversations like this, I get a big kick out of listening to you guys as far as the younger generations. And then, we talk about the impact as far as people is generation after generation after generation. So when I get an opportunity to have a platform with young people like you, I believe in everything being a teachable moment. I'm always listening. I'm always learning. So that's self-care, being able to receive, as we talked about communication, being able to receive from you guys, to sit back and just listen and be able to take note, knowing that there's, a guy told me one time, and, I pray a lot too, but he said, you got to realize somebody prayed for you. And that really hit me. You know what I mean? Like that gets deep. So when you think about it, whether it was your mother, somebody in your family, or grandmother or something, or even before that, but somebody prayed for you, and you're that answered prayer. So that's all I got, bro.
Brother Eric?
Oh yeah. So for me, self-care looks like being open and available and present to be with my children. And I say that, and not in a light sense, like, oh, I'm just present, I'm a parent, but it means allowing them to lead me, because they're brilliant, right? And I don't mean that as a self-centered parent, I mean a selfish parent. I'm saying that our children are geniuses and they're brilliant. And they are often, in spaces where they're less fractured than we are. And so being able to follow their mind and their impulse, like even today, like I rushed in this evening running a little bit late because we spent some time down by the water today, because that's their thing. It's just like that. Let's go for a walk, Dad. Like, let's go for, and so being able to allow them the space to be themselves, and to follow their lead is liberating for me. And so that's one of my forms of self-care. And then as Brother Doug said, the other piece is talking. This what we do here every week is healing, because I never ever cease to feel some type of inspiration or joy from our conversations. There's always a nugget of wisdom that's being shared. There's always a sense of community and connection that's formed, or that's reinvigorated, right? To know that we are all part of this same system. And I got, as Brother Oba said earlier, like-minded individuals. Like, just to know that y'all are here and that we can connect on this level is rewarding. So for me, those are my my self-care techniques that I use.
Thank you, Eric. So for me, it's the same thing. It seemed like there was a similar pulse, and I guess even as Kirsten showed outside of her window, water, being down by the water. I go by Kelly Drive often, and just being by peaceful water, even though there's a river there, it's something about the water that just makes me feel more alive, free. Staring at the water, or just walking by it, jogging by it, riding a bike by it. There's something peaceful about it. And water, it sustains us. It's necessary for our lives inside. It also is used to clean us, but then also just being by the water is something about it that's still and peaceful that I encourage other people to take an opportunity to experience. Journaling helps me a lot. Praying helps tremendously, and reflecting, the way that Brother Doug just said about realizing somebody prayed for you. Like some of us are, most of us are answered prayer, even if we're not walking in what ultimately that prayer is just yet. We're on a path to that. And in closing, I wanted to say this is still the year of focus. Focus is different in what we may have thought about it at first, where it's just like focus, like I'm determined to go in that direction. It seems like it's more so been like adjusting the lens to focus. We started this year looking at life one way, and we've had to readjust it, and we see it differently. This has been a beautiful year, even with all the tragedy. It's been a beautiful year because it's pushed us to walk into purpose, out of going from places of survival to places of compassion, to places of being a better community, to walking in conviction. It just put us in position to succeed. This Brother George organization, Survival to Success, all of us have been put in a position to succeed as a community. So together we're moving forward as mankind, as humankind. I encourage everybody, while right now we're in a time of transition with our government, exercise your right to vote. Understand certain states have different rules. In Pennsylvania, your vote has to be received and processed by election day, not postmarked. It has to already be counted by election day. So I encourage you to vote as soon as they come out. If it's October 1st or whenever they come out, send it in, because we can't afford for our votes to not be counted. Census right now is going on. Philadelphia has one of the most underreported numbers of census right now, and those are billions of dollars that don't hit our city. Please exercise your opportunity to conduct the census or participate in the census. And also forgive yourself and forgive others. Those things go a long way. Not forgiving others holds you hostage. It lets a person live in your head rent free, right? And people can already be in a whole different place without you on their mind. So this has been a great conversation. It really does take a village to heal. It takes a village in order to raise people, and I appreciate every single one of you. I appreciate our studio audience. every single person who tunes in every week. We really love and appreciate the fact that you listen and that you give feedback. And we hope that you're applying these things so that the quality of life that you have improves, because that's what it's doing for us. It's nothing about this for money, for fame or fortune, not one thing other than to see our quality of lives improve. So thank you for being on this journey with us. Join us here again next Wednesday for another episode of Wellness Wednesday. The following episodes are going to be about back to school. We're going to have an art therapy session, which I'm very excited about. We're also going to have a discussion about Black brotherly love that Brother Eric is really excited about, and he's going to spearhead that conversation. And then I believe we're also going to have a poetry night. We're really grateful for these opportunities to share different components of mental health and a spiritual journey and just the quality of life journey, right? So thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone have a peaceful night. Thank you.
All right.
God bless.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
To love.